This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Welcome to the Xcast X-Files Podwatch. This is the 93rd episode of our series, and today we're talking about existence and nothing important happened today. I'm your host today, Carl Sweeney, and I'm joined for the second time on the Xcast by Raj Sisodia. Hello, Raj.
Hi, Carl. Happy to be here.
Yeah, good to talk to you again. So just to give a quick peek behind the curtain, we've had a couple of sound issues, so this is our second attempt at recording this podcast. So hopefully we'll sound well-rehearsed and authoritative, but let's find out. All right, let's move on to these two episodes then. The first one is Existence, which is the final episode of Season 8, the 21st and final episode.
Yep.
It was broadcast in May 2001, written by Chris Carter, directed by Kim Manners. This is the episode in which Reyes drives Scully to a remote location so that she can give birth, whilst Mulder and Doggett remain in Washington. All right, Raj, so I know from before that you find this a very satisfying episode, and I like it a lot too. Just tell me why. Why do you think it succeeds as an episode?
Well, I think the entire two-parter is brilliant, but Existence in particular, it's very close quarters. It's thrilling. The emotional beats work really well. The sci-fi elements work really well. The kind of thriller dynamics work really well. Like, you know, there's lots of interesting foot chases. There's an excellent car chase. Also, Robert Patrick as Doggett really sells the bewilderment and the panic when he kind of realizes, like, wow, okay, like, I'm going to have to take this stuff way more seriously than I thought. Like, he really sells that, the urgency of it, you know. All of the actors do. So, yeah, there's a lot of richness in Existence, and it's, as a result, it's very, very satisfying episode of television.
Yeah, there's quite a lot to try and unpack here in quite a short time. So let's start with Scully and Reyes. So I know you're a big fan of Annabeth Gish as Monica Reyes, and there's some great stuff for her character in this episode, including the infamous whale song moment.
I love that moment.
Yeah, I think it's a very good moment. I think some people kind of really dislike it. I don't understand why exactly. I think it fits very nicely. Some kind of like flirtatious behaviour from Reyes to Scully as well. And this kind of storyline leads obviously to the birth of William, ultimately. So what did you think of... Well, I'll let you talk about Reyes first of all, but also this side of the episode, this part of the episode.
Well, I love Reyes, like I said, and I love that whale song moment because it just felt, to me, it just felt genuine. It's like in an episode that's so intense and played so straight, the fact that they can get some humor that felt like character-based, it didn't feel forced. It just felt like a natural expression of Reyes. She's trying to comfort Scully, and she's kind of being a bit goofy, and Scully is sort of like, thinks, oh, that's really sweet. And it just felt natural to me. But in larger terms, and yeah, the kind of flirtatious behavior, I thought it was just very sweet. Annabeth Gish played that entire episode with a real sweetness. But something else that I don't think I've seen people really mention is I sometimes wonder if they were trying to play around with the audience as if like maybe Reyes might be potentially revealed as like a bad guy or an imposter, because she gives a few strange looks here and there, like when she notices the star when they're at Democrat Hot Springs, and she doesn't tell Scully about it. And I just think those were just little hints for perhaps casual viewers just to think like, okay, what's going on here? Like, you know, when you look at it as a whole, you can see it's that she's just trying to keep Scully safe, and she doesn't want to burden her with any more information than she needs. She's trying to keep Scully focused. But so I like that. It just tells me that the writers are trying to put as much nuance into that episode as they can, with little details like that.
And the other interesting thing about that whale song moment is that that's when Scully makes the link to her sister Melissa as well, which is a nice callback.
It is, yeah.
What about the drama of the birth and so on? Quite an intense sequence, and childbirth is quite difficult to put on television or on film. How well do you think they pulled it off?
I think they did it really well because I watched the episode twice, rewatched it twice before speaking to you, and the way the scene is edited, like on Scully's screams and breaths intercut with the car chase and so on and so forth. Like, please don't let them take it. Oh, and she's like breathing. She's doing her like Lamar's breathing, and I just thought it was brilliantly edited together. It really felt quite electrifying to me personally. A scene that I just thought that this, for some reason, has stuck in my mind is when the female ranger character, when Monica throws the boiling water in her face and she stumbles out, and then she's screaming, and then she just looks up suddenly into the camera and stops screaming, and she's like, "This baby will be born." Yeah. That scene is somehow burned into my mind. I think because of the suddenness of which she looks up to camera, like a cobra or something, and just little details like that I thought were quite effective.
Yeah, I think that actress was very well cast, actually. Yeah, I really agree. I absolutely agree. Let's turn back to the Washington, D.C. storyline. So we talked about this a little bit before on the aborted recording, but what I said was there's lots of interiors, lots of stuff in the car park, the FBI building, and so on, the elevator. And there's an interesting contrast with the expansive nature of the early season mythology and like the LA era mythology where it's kind of more intimate or something. And you had a good take, I thought, on why that's appropriate here and why it works so well.
Yeah, like I think I said earlier that normally when producers kind of close down the horizon on a TV show in that way and use more interior stuff, it's usually because they're trying to save money or whatever. But in this episode, it really works in that kind of claustrophobic sense, and because that episode, I see it more as Doggett's episode rather than Mulder's episode. And from Doggett's perspective, it's like the evil is creeping closer and closer. It's insidious, and it's like slithering its way into his workplace and into his boss's offices and into the corridors of the Hoover building. And he's kind of freaking out where he's like, he really sells that feeling of like, damn, like, okay, this stuff is real, way realer than I thought, and I need to take this seriously, and I'm panicking because I don't know who to trust. And so that close quarters, interiors, foot chases, all of that stuff, just, it really worked in that kind of sense.
Yeah, that's interesting because there are some episodes like One Son where you get a lot of interiors, and I sort of feel that, almost as if the story should have been more expansive, but I totally agree with what you said about this one. Yeah. And with it, as regards Doggett, there's an interesting scene, isn't there, when Noel Rohrer sort of spins him the super soldier yarn.
Yeah.
And it's kind of after this point, really, but that seems to get a bit murky. At this point, it feels like Rohrer's just trying to misdirect Doggett.
Yes.
What was your take on that?
Exactly. And, I think Noel Rohrer clearly has some sort of other agenda, and Doggett can clearly see that, and Robert Patrick plays it that way. Like, he gives him these intense stares, and he's like, he knows, he just can't figure out what the hell is going on, but he knows things are very, very wrong. I think Doggett's trying to scramble for any lead and any kind of way out of this nightmare that he can, and yet at every turn he's presented with more evidence of this nightmare getting closer and closer. So I kind of liked it from that perspective.
Yeah, me too. And we should mention the death of Alex Krycek. What about this ending for him then? Obviously killed by Skinner, and I said Skinner, he walks across the FBI car park looking a bit like Dirty Harry, like really cool, pointing his pistol in the air.
Yeah.
And so this is the end for a great character. Yeah. Although he will return in The Truth, obviously, but in a different fashion.
Well, as I said earlier, Krycek is probably my favorite character in the entire show. And I think Nick Lee plays Krycek with this kind of whispery, breezy, sort of casual menace that I just find utterly terrifying. He's such a horrific character. And when all of the terrible things that he does, trying to murder Scully's baby and just all of this awfulness, but his way of delivering lines is so casual and breezy and terrifying that I just find him captivating to watch. So all of the kind of the kind of twinning that they do between Krycek and Mulder, kind of like Krychek sort of in a way being his like evil twin, or but they do this in very sort of subtle ways. And when Krychek is saying to Mulder, like, I was praying that you'd win somehow, I could have killed you so many times, like, you really believe that Krychek believes what he's saying. So yeah, so when Skinner strolls up as Dirty Harry, I really felt this kind of like feral, dangerous quality emerge from Skinner, like where he's like, okay, you messed around with me, Krychek, for so long, and you had me over a barrel, and now it's payback time.
Yeah, it's a great Skinner moment, definitely. All right then, so the episode concludes with this very delicate scene between Mulder and Scully, with Baby William obviously there as well. I really like the way it's directed. I think it's done very tactfully.
Yes.
The way the camera pulls back and everything.
Yeah.
And I think at one point this perhaps could have been the series finale. I think in the later years of the series there was always the possibility that the finale would become the series finale.
Yes.
Obviously that didn't happen here, but would this have been an appropriate like jumping off point for the characters of Mulder and Scully, do you think?
Yeah, for me personally, I mean, like, I have a lot of issues with season 9. Even though there's amazing work done in it, and there's still a lot of great stuff in season 9, yeah. I really felt as if, in a way, most of the more risk-taking and interesting mythology developments kind of ended in season 8, in the sense that season 9, the mythology episodes that they did do were kind of variations on already established themes. So for me, the idea of Scully's pregnancy, William being some kind of special child, some kind of chosen one, and the kind of biblical allusions that they peppered all throughout season 8 all came together really, really well. The idea of Mulder following a star, like all these things which were done really tastefully, I thought. So I felt like, I guess what I'm saying is, as a fan, I'll always enjoy more X-Files. Gimme. But like the heart of their kind of story for me kind of reached its height in that kind of scene, that kind of tableau.
Nothing Important Happened Today is the first episode of season 9, broadcast in November 2001. And this is written by Chris Carter and Frank Spotnitz and directed by Kim Manners again. And in this episode, Doggett investigates the death of an Environmental Protection Agency official, whilst Scully realises that Baby William may have special powers. You reflected a bit there on season 9. I'll just say that I think two things. A, I think season 9 is the weakest season of the X-Files, of the original series. Yeah. But also B, that it's underrated as a season, and I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think that I'd have to look at a list to be sure, but I think there's like 6, 7, 8 episodes I'm like really fond of, or I like to varying extents anyway.
Yes.
So there's a lot of good stuff, but big problems with the season. Big problems, I think, with this opening episode.
I agree.
It seems to me to undo a lot of the good work of the end of existence in a really odd way. Yeah. What do you think?
I totally agree, and I do agree that season 9 is an underrated season in total. I think it tramples over a lot of network TV of its time, and it looks really nice. Like I like the cinematography, and it's a little bit slicker. But in terms of this episode in particular, I agree. It did undo a lot of the work, and it undid a lot of the emotional power and resonance of existence. They kind of set up this internal investigation of Kirsch, and then it's almost like they felt like we've kind of wrote ourselves into a corner or something. Or this episode felt like the writers were trying to extricate themselves from something, and they didn't quite know how to do it. The way they tried to get out of that is by giving kind of the thoughts that the fans would be having as to how this went down. They give that to Doggett, where he's basically saying, what the hell is going on? None of this makes any sense. Why is any of this happening? And it's kind of what I assume the fans were thinking. I think when writers do that, where they kind of they put the plot holes and inconsistencies of their own narrative into the mouths of one of the characters, to me that just feels a little bit lazy. But having said that, Robert Patrick really does sell that confusion and that sense of desperation. He really does sell it. So when I rewatched it recently, I was feeling his desperation, and I was feeling his, like, he doesn't really know where to turn. He doesn't know what the hell is going on. And so in that sense, I think he managed to kind of like save an emotional core to the story that I think would have been otherwise lacking.
I mean, he's always very good, isn't he? I think he's always excellent, I thought.
Yeah.
All right, so I think the main thing is that Mulder is gone, obviously. Duchovny's not on the series anymore. We see his backside double in the shower in the first few scenes of the episode. I mean, they're dealt quite a tough hand, I think, the writers. And also there's some off-screen drama, I think, with Chris Carter at this stage, where he was quite late to sign back on for season 9. So I know he does get a credit here, but this may have been a Spotnitz episode primarily, I believe. What should they have done? How should they have proceeded for season 9?
I think I'm not sure of the timing of this, but if I was one of the producers, when I was doing Existence, if it was clear that Duchovny didn't want to return for season 9, I would have had him do some kind of piece to camera or a few, like maybe like a recorded message or even just an audio message of some, whatever reason they came up with Mulder to leave, just so that at least Mulder's presence is felt in that episode, so it doesn't just feel like he's bailed on his newborn child, which just seems so utterly out of character for Mulder. But kind of what annoyed me is that they give Scully the dialogue of he's just gone, and stop asking, and which just feels a little bit lazy and kind of like annoying. It's like Scully's sort of saying to the audience, look, just trust me. Like, just trust us. And I think there are a variety of ways they could have done that more elegantly and more subtly. Like, okay, you didn't have to include Mulder if you couldn't have his physical presence there. You could have at least maybe not held off on the idea for so long that it was Scully's idea to have him leave. If you kind of set that up a lot earlier, so you can kind of get the fans on side, and maybe just broaden that idea a little bit so you can kind of understand, like, okay, Mulder didn't want to leave, but Scully was like, whatever, the big bad is too close, it's too crazy, this is my decision. So that we can follow that sort of logic through that episode with Scully, rather than trying to figure out like what felt like a series of odd writing choices. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I sort of feel that, and this is a bit of a heretical thought, I think, for an X-Files fan, but I think Scully's quite a big problem in season 9.
I have the same heretical thought, so you're not alone, Carl. You're not alone.
And I don't know, I feel that the Doggett Reyes season should have been given more of a chance to stand or fall on its own merits. The problem is that Mulder in his absence and Scully in her presence kind of undermine that, I feel.
Yes.
And it's a real shame.
It is.
But I think the trouble with this episode specifically is that it comes across as quite dramatically kind of inert, quite flat.
It does. There doesn't feel to be any kind of narrative tension or any kind of like punch to the supposed thrills. Like I did like the concept of Lucy Lawless playing this super soldier, ex-USMC buddy of Doggett's, and I was like, oh, if they use her as like an uneasy ally in a kind of Krychek vein, but maybe slightly nicer, like, I think that could have worked, you know. But it just felt a little bit like a bunch of writers trying to write an X-Files episode and kind of overextending themselves and not quite getting the tone right, and not quite getting the emotional beats or the thriller beats quite right. Yeah.
And seeing as you're, obviously you're a Reyes booster, a Reyes supporter, and in this episode we're introduced to Carrie Elwes as Brad Fulmer, kind of an ex-boyfriend, now kind of superior.
Yes.
I don't know, I sort of feel like this episode brings us the first signs of trouble for the Reyes character in some ways.
I agree completely.
I think that opening scene where it establishes that she's got an ex-boyfriend. I believe the original intention was that she'd be a lesbian,
Yeah.
and possibly there was some off-screen pressure from Fox to go in a different direction.
Well, I always assumed. I mean, I watched this when I was like in my teens, right? And so I just always assumed that Reyes was a lesbian, or at the very least bisexual. Yeah. And so that's why, like, you know, all of the like lingering glances to Scully and just her general ambiguity, you know, none of that passed me by. So I was really into that, and I just thought, this is fresh, this is different, and she, you know, she's not portrayed as this predatory, like, you know, that character is not done in a ham-fisted way in season 8. It's like, it just feels very genuine and quite gentle. So then when we're sort of introduced to this kind of guy who just exudes like slimeball, and we're meant to believe that suddenly now she has this, not only does she's been sort of, her sexuality's been reassigned, but like she has this like really odd, creepy, slimy character as an ex, and he doesn't do anything to not come across as slimy and creepy, and yet she's the one who calls him up to go and meet them in the bar after he gives her that weird, awkward kiss in his office. And I'm just thinking, I'm just like, this doesn't make sense. She's like, Annabeth Gish is playing the initial scenes as like, Brad, what are you doing? It's been 2 years, like, don't kiss me, this is weird. And then she meets him in the bar and she's like, well, I called you. And I'm just thinking, I don't really understand her motivations here. I don't buy them. And I don't buy that character as her ex, not at all. Like, I mean, even if she, say, for example, she was bisexual and so she was into girls and guys, like, I just don't buy him being someone that she would have been that interested in, really.
Yeah, you know, Reyes gets kind of blown one way or another in season 9 as a character, and it's a real shame. It's a real shame. There are times when she just seems like a watered-down version of Scully or something in certain episodes, and I think she's kind of sold a bit short in season 9. Possibly the last note I wanted to hit on was that these episodes were filmed before the 9/11 events and broadcast afterwards. And Chris Carter's often talked about that he thinks that 9/11 affected the way these episodes were received by the audience. Part of me thinks that's quite a bit too simplistic, actually, because I think you can't ignore the fact there's been quite a big drop-off in quality from Essence and Existence to the 2 Nothing Important Happened Today episodes. But I'm really curious to get your thoughts on like the social context of it.
What I think is that I agree with you. It's far too simplistic. I think had the show continued at that time, had we had season 10 straight after season 9, then I think that whole 9/11 blah, blah, blah theory would hold more weight, in the sense that people might have been like, yeah, we don't really want to deal with conspiracy and government, and it just would have felt, I think, out of step. Having said that, I don't really think that applies to season 9, because I think season 8 ended on such a high point. Fans really got involved into Doggett as like a lead investigator. It was great. It was a great season, and it was a great finale. So I think fans, and even casual fans who had like joined the show in season 8, would have been giving season 9 a lot of goodwill.
Is there anything else about this episode you wanted to raise, or any points you wanted to make before we wrap up?
I like that they were trying to deepen the color palette and kind of just like punch up the cinematography. It felt a little bit slicker, and I think as season 9 develops, it feels a lot more network. But other than that, no, I think we've covered pretty much all of the bases. Like, I don't want people to think that I'm ragging on season 9, because there's still a lot of great stuff in there. And to me, it's still, frankly, as a fan, it's still head and shoulders above a lot of the stuff that was around at that time.
Okay, Raj, thank you very much. And don't worry, I think there are people who contribute to this podcast who are a lot more negative about season 9 than you and I are. So I don't think we've been overly critical today.
We sort of see quite eye to eye on this subject.
Yeah, it seems that way so far. It's been really nice talking to you.
No worries, it's been a pleasure.
Okay, tomorrow on the podcast, it's Nothing Important Happened Today 2 and Daemonicus. In the meantime, you can find us on the usual places, on Twitter at the X_cast, and on Facebook. If you search for Xcast, you'll find our page and our group. Well, that's it for now. Until next time, trust no one.